Nick Uren from the Phoenix Mercury, general manager. The WNBA has been extremely hot the last 2 years, and Nick has seen that rise. I think he joined the Mercury in 2023. Attendance has been soaring, and apparently the 2025 WNBA draft outperformed in terms of viewership both the NHL and MLB drafts this year. So
yeah,
crazy progress. And it's funny that we're up here because I think the reason we met is actually because the Mercury name. It's literally because both organizations are called Mercury, and I don't know what the connection ended up being, but it's very cool to have you up here on stage with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I guess for those of us who are not sports fans, or even some who are sports fans and still find it mysterious, maybe you can just start off by telling us a little bit about what a general manager actually does.
Yeah.
What that means.
So I'll start out with something my former boss, Bob Myers, used to say, and it's incredibly vague, but simultaneously descriptive. A general manager's job is to generally manage. And I'd say like any one of my given days, like I'm meeting with our health and performance team about the health and availability of our players. We just built a 4-person analytics department, research and R&D and analytics department, which is probably, not to go on too much of a tangent, but the thing I'm most excited about going on with our Mercury at this moment. It's a 4-person, all-female analytics team, which is like, I think the analytics space in women's sports in general is so untapped that I'm really excited about that. So just making sure we remove any roadblocks they have. Talking with our ops person about whether we're flying after the game from LA to Minneapolis or whether we're staying the night over, all the while getting calls from agents, 5 to 10 calls from agents and players popping into your office upset about their playing time or this or that. So every day is very, very different. And I would say I think the general population feels like a general manager's job is like the draft, free agency, building a roster. That's certainly the crux of it, but it's probably like 20% of my job. And I'm sure CEOs and founders and entrepreneurs can identify with that. Like, I wish I had more time to just watch basketball, but there's so much other things to manage, which takes me to kind of the way I'll reference Bob again. Like, Bob used to describe this job like, it's taking care of a bonsai tree. It's a snippet here, it's cutting a leaf here. It needs to be tended to every day. This is not a cactus that you can show up 4 times a year, draft, free agency, and training camp and water it 4 times a year and have it survive. So I don't know, hopefully that answers the question, but it's wide ranging, and I think it's a lot more than kind of the general public realizes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always thought it was just trades, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
But it sounds like you're basically the same as any job here. I feel like for most people, just doing whatever it takes to win, more or less.
Yep.
All right, first thing to kick us off here, we wanted to ask you a little bit about how to build in opinion-heavy spaces. So the sports world, obviously, there's a lot of conventional wisdom. There's a lot of lessons people have learned over the years. There's obviously a lot of history in basketball.
Yep.
How do you think about how to balance all that wisdom that's been passed down over decades of coaches and GMs and players, along with new perspectives around how to win and what matters?
Yeah. The first kind of word that comes to mind is humility, and I don't say that like, false humility or whatever, but like, I would imagine it's the same in the entrepreneur space or the startup space. Like, so much relies on luck, and so, you look at the NBA playoffs, like Jason Tatum hurt, Steph Curry hurt, like these are things we can't control. And so to me, if you start from that place of knowing so much is out of your control, it makes it a lot easier, a lot less scary to like do something different or do something you believe in. I kind of think of it like, what's more scary, like, or what's less scary, like doing something new and innovative that you believe in, where you might fail, or doing the same old thing that has been done for years and years and years, and you still might fail, And so to me, that makes taking that leap a little bit easier, realizing like, let's realize there's a lot that's out of our control the controllables, and like, do something you really believe in.
I think the Warriors are well known for having a brand around doing things a bit differently or trying to be a bit more modern in how they approach building their team and the organization. Are there certain lessons that you've taken from your time at the Warriors to the Mercury and have tried to innovate in that space?
I think with the Warriors, like we just had it's going to sound so basic, but we had incredible people. And I think when you think about the Warriors, like culture, and one thing we've tried to bring to the Phoenix Mercury is like, culture is such a buzzword, but culture to me is just good people doing the right thing day after day after day. And so the perfect example for me is like, we have this amazing operations person, Kira Vitas, with the Mercury right now. And she goes above and beyond every single day, not because I ask her to, but because it's in her DNA, it's what she does. So, for instance, our players move into their team apartment housing, and she has gone to the nursery and bought plants. She's arranged a cleaning service. She's gotten, sheets, towels, everything. Like, many teams don't do that. And so, like, now this place feels like home when somebody moves in. Or we had a player, first time in America, landing from France. She's 24 years old, never been to the States, lands at 2:30 in the morning, and Kira's there personally to pick her up. And like, none of that I'm asking her to do, but like 80%, and we had similar people at the Warriors, like 80% of like what people know as Warriors culture is just people doing extraordinary things, going above and beyond day after day after day. And that's what builds the culture more so than any sort of grand, idea or anything like that.
Yeah, so you said you didn't, ask for any of this stuff explicitly, but do you think there are parts about the culture that you've built that sort of encourage this? Do you focus a lot on this during hiring? Like, how do you actually try to build it?
Yeah, 100%. I probably spend as much time thinking about our staff as I do our roster on the floor. Like, to me, we have to make sure we enjoy coming to work with one another. Sports is, I think Imad referenced it, like the work-life balance is tough. Somebody described working in sports as like, it's a lifestyle, it's not a job. And so if you don't enjoy the people you're doing it with, like we're sacrificing enough time, apart from our families and our loved ones. I sure as hell am not doing it with people I don't enjoy. And so, it's a hard enough job. And so we spend a ton of time hiring, and you have to have a requisite level of intelligence and skills, of course. But how you fit and whether I look forward to coming to work every day with you, that's an old Greg Popovich saying, like players, staff included, like we want to look forward to seeing the person at work the next day. That's kind of what I try to use as a barometer.
Yeah, and do you think the same applies to the actual team itself? How do you think about evaluating talent there and bringing on great players to the organization?
No doubt. I think there's an element of that for sure. Like in basketball, I assume it's the same in your world, but you have to have a requisite level of talent. Like it's a superstar league. Like if you don't have the talent to win you games, you're gonna really struggle. So the first step is finding that talent, and then I think what we're hopefully doing with the Phoenix Mercury. I think one of the greatest things that people don't talk a ton about with the Warriors was like, let's take Steph Curry for an example. Like Steph was the sun that the entire solar system revolved around. Like transcendent talent, but especially early in his career, he was on the small side, struggled defensively, made some wild decisions. And so I think what our front office did remarkably well was surround him with the pieces that allowed him to be, as special as he could be. So that's surrounding him with size at the guard and wing positions. Klay Thompson defended, the best opponent guard every single night. Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston brought a level of steadiness and intelligence that kind of counteracted some of Steph's wildness. And so like surrounding him with the right people. I think you see the same thing in Denver when they won their championship around Jokic. With the Phoenix Mercury, we've got Alyssa Thomas, Satu Sabali, Kalia Copper, 3 of the top players in the WNBA. Now, how do we surround them that allows them to shine brightest? In my opinion, it's shooting. We've got to create a ton of shooting to create a ton of space around them. So that's what we're trying to go find. And so obviously the first step is like finding that requisite talent. And then the second part is like, how do you put the right pieces around them that allow them to flourish?
And do you feel like it's the talent itself that draws other talent into the Mercury organization, or are there other things that you also think about to try to actually attract people over to playing with you?
I think it's both. It's certainly both. We try to, it goes back to kind of what I said about, like, we call them inches, like every little inch that we can do. And it's part of why I was interested in the job. Like, we have an owner who is willing to put every single resource behind the team. And that was really appealing to me, especially on the women's side, not only because it's what they deserve. These women have been playing as professional athletes for a long, long time and not been treated as professional athletes. So the ability to go work for someone who would pour into them and give them those resources, but now not every team is doing that. And so how can we create advantages to where that attracts talent to us? But certainly having talent on the floor that other people want to play with doesn't hurt either. So trying to do both.
And great contracts, I guess, doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. I have a very specific question here, which is about creating innovation-friendly culture. And back in 2015, you were the, I guess, video guy for the Warriors, and you were the one who actually suggested pulling center Andrew Bogut, who started 65 games, and starting in his place small forward Andre Iguodala.
Still riding that wave 10 years later.
You're the one decision that changed everything, I guess. But I guess, like, how did that idea come about, and how did you actually, I guess, like, how did the organization actually feel about getting that feedback from you when you were maybe not the most important person in the Warriors organization at the time?
To me, that, like, the novelty of the story at the time, and even now, is like, you know, this peon, like, video guy has this idea, and like that's what the cool headline was about. But to me, it was like, that story is entirely about Coach Kerr and the culture that he created back then. That was our first year as a staff with the Warriors, and continues to this day with the Warriors. To me, it's three parts. Like, Coach Kerr created an environment where a small, no-name person like myself was comfortable speaking up in the NBA Finals with a relatively drastic idea. That's so rare, like, for someone to feel comfortable, you know, speaking that in a group at that stage. So for me to feel comfortable with that is a huge credit to Coach Kerr for the culture he creates and the comfortability and the flow of ideas. Second, like, he deserves all the credit for implementing it. Like, it was easy for me to make a little suggestion like that, but, like, I wasn't going to bear the weight of whether it worked or not. And to have the guts to do that in Game 4 of the finals, down 2-1, is like, that's the second thing, is how much trust and fearlessness that takes from Coach. And then third, to share the credit at the end of the day. Like, you know, who does that in the finals, to share credit with, you know, someone low level like myself? He could have taken it for himself or just said it was the staff, whatever. So to me, that story is entirely about Coach and Coach Kerr and the culture that he created for those three things to happen, much more than it was about, you know, the idea or when I had it or how it got executed.
And do you feel like you've been able to bring some of that to the Mercury now, and have been able to create that type of culture?
I have certainly tried. The few things that I've tried to do, you know, it's my first time leading, is like, we try to encourage, you know, the sharing of ideas. The times it probably comes into play most often is like during the draft or at the trade deadline, when we rank our players, rank our desires, et cetera. And when we get together as a group, the one thing I try to do is I always try to speak last. You know, like, we've done a ton of research in terms of, like, preparing for the draft and whatnot, and it's no one's intent, but the ease and the pervasiveness of groupthink, you know, and so, like, we try to keep all our opinions separate until it's time to meet. And then I try to let everybody else speak, and I'll speak last, just to not tilt or influence the room. And then the second thing I do is, like, I just try to really go out of my way to praise ideas or opinions that we didn't end up using. You know, I just tell everybody, like, it's your job to bring these ideas. It's our job as a leadership, myself, our assistant general manager, to, like, be the governor and decide what ends up getting implemented, but it's your job to bring these ideas to the forefront. And so I try to go out of my way to, like, really praise things that don't end up getting utilized, to encourage people to keep bringing them to the forefront.
Yeah. Have you gotten any wild ideas recently about things to change?
I'm trying to think, like, no, but one of our staff members had the idea to have a bad idea summit, and basically, like, bring your worst ideas, and 9 out of 10 probably don't work, but, like, we all know how that goes. Like, we can laugh about it, but, like, then you start talking about it, and, like, maybe it's a spin-off of that idea, and you talk a little bit more about it, and then that takes a turn, and then that takes a turn, and it leads you to somewhere cool. So I actually love that idea. We'll have to implement, like, Mercury Spheres Bad Idea Summit 2026. But I like the concept of things like that, because they can snowball and take different turns and lead you to some cool spaces.
Love the idea of a Bad Idea Summit. So Heather, we have Heather here. Maybe that'll be our headline thing next year. Cool. I think we're pretty much just about at time. But I guess a last question I have is, do you have any hot takes on either the WNBA or the NBA, things that you're excited about sharing with the audience, I guess.
That's a great question. I don't have any super hot takes. I just think that the W is in such an amazing space right now. Like in the NBA, it's still an incredible product, but so much of the margins have been just stripped away. You know, like there's so much money and research put into it, you know, like whether it's the analytics space or on the business side, whatever. And the W is at such an awesome crossroads in terms of like the growth, the viewership, the money that's pouring in, but it's still in its nascent stages to where like some real change can happen quickly. And I can see it on so many levels, like things are changing by the week and by the month in this league. And that's really fun to, one, be a part of, but I think as a fan to watch as well.
Yeah, it's super exciting to see from my perspective, which is just a fan of basketball. So
yeah.
Thanks, Nick, for joining us, and congrats on all the success with the WNBA, and look forward to following the Mercury in the years to come.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Yeah,
great to have you.
Yeah.